Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about Alyssa Milano and her testing positive for the coronavirus. Now, excuse me, her story is a little bit convoluted. I mean, Alyssa Milano, as many of you may know, she's an actor. She's going to be in a reboot of Who's the Boss with Tony Danza. And again, going back to her testing positive for the coronavirus, this was after she had been tested negative like 2 or 3 times, I believe, for the coronavirus. And what she's going to do something where this message is conveyed, uh, where this testing is very well flawed. And this is something where it does raise the question now, how many more people may have actually had this that were tested negative and were really positive. Matthew Stafford, he's a prolific NFL quarterback. Some of you may have heard he had actually been tested positive recently, and he was negative for it. They found out later it was a false positive test. When you have Neptune and Pisces, you're talking about, I mean, energy with a lot of misdiagnoses. Now I'm going to talk about Alyssa Milano's natal chart placements and some transits that may be tied in to this. Now, the thing, what I'm looking at in her natal chart, I mean, she does have certain susceptibility toward the coronavirus because she does have she has Mercury in the 12th house. Mercury is in its detriment in Sagittarius, but it's also being in that 12th house of limitations and restrictions, and it could be an indicator of breathing issues. Uh, Mercury is associated with breathing, and it appears to be at least a conjunction or close to conjunct her natal Neptune. And when you have natal Neptune conjunct Mercury, that could be an indicator of dissolving dissipation of breathing. She had stated something like she felt like there was this big elephant that was on her chest. And this thing about the coronavirus, what people have to realize is I do believe that we're talking about fact and fallacy, what's fallacious, what's veracious. But the thing I'm pretty convinced is that this coronavirus is for real, and I don't think this is something that is just made up. And I know there's some conspiracy theorists out there, but going back to her natal chart and some susceptibility toward this, she also has Saturn in Gemini in the sixth house of health, and Saturn in Gemini, even by itself, can manifest in breathing issues, restrictions with breathing, the respiratory system, the lungs, and to top it off, when you have it in the sixth house of health, that could add insult to abject misery. Basically, that could even accentuate health-related matters in connection with that. And it is conjunct her moon in Gemini. The moon in Gemini by itself may give some issues with breathing, respiratory problems, the lungs. I have my natal moon in Gemini, and I have had extensive irrevocable nerve damage to my arms and hands, and I think that may play a role in it to some degree. Don't get me wrong, I do believe the sun and the ascendant are the two main culprits as far as astrological energy goes, with physical debilitations and restrictions, but the moon may play a role in it to some degree. It is one of the three main proponents in the astrological chart, and it's not really much of a physical entity, but it still can play a role in physical issues. I'm not convinced the moon plays that much of a dominant role in one's appearance, but you may have some afflictions connected with it. It's like me having the Venus in Leo. Now, Venus in Leo, I don't believe Venus plays much of a role, if any, in one's physical appearance, but it doesn't mean you can't have afflictions that are associated with the sign slash planet, and I could have some susceptibility toward heart-related issues. Now, going back to Alyssa Milano's chart, another thing that I've noticed with us now, you're talking about her natal Neptune again being in The 12th house Neptune can be about diseases, and being in Sagittarius, one of a global nature. I mean, you're talking about, even though it's generational, it may I think it still could manifest in that manner. The 12th house is the house of hospitalization and limitations. I'm sure she had been hospitalized during that time when she had tested negative for this coronavirus, when in actuality she did really, I believe, have it. What it was is there was a discovery of the antibodies in her that were associated with the coronavirus. Now, something else too is that the ruler of her sixth house in her natal chart falls in the 12th house. The fact that this conjuncts Neptune is another indicator of a health related issue that can arise that could be connected with a disease. But the fact that you're talking about the sixth house of the rule of the sixth house of health in the 12th house of deception, it's not surprising there was a misdiagnosis in this health related matter originally. And having Gemini on the sixth house cusp by itself can manifest in some health related issues that are Gemini related, whether it could be the arms, shoulders, hands, the lungs, breathing issues, the respiratory system. And the thing too is another thing that I'm looking at as well, as far as she also has Mars and Scorpio in her chart. Now, Mars in Scorpio by itself can manifest in some physical related matters that could be associated with the virus, I would say, because Scorpio, I believe, is the zodiac sign connected with viruses, because Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, and Pluto, of course, corresponds with viruses in astrology. Now, another thing that I'm noticing too in her chart. Now, it's interesting because right now transit Pluto appears to be very close to her natal north node. So this is about when the north node is involved in transit, it can manifest in issues that could be it could be about where one may have to address or confront certain issues when the north node is involved in transit, whether it's a transiting planet hitting it or whether the north node is in transit contacting an astrological energy. Now, the fact that transit Pluto is very close to her natal north node, it's not surprising she has to be confronting life and death issues, possible something that was potentially perilous, that obviously didn't kill her. Thank the man upstairs for that. The one thing about this coronavirus, I mean, at least we know its mortality rate is still relatively low. The fact, though, that it has killed over 150,000 United States citizens, and those are confirmed deaths. It doesn't mean there's more. There's not more than that. I mean, but anyway, another thing that I'm noticing too is also the fact that transit Jupiter is very close to her north node in Capricorn right now. So this is going to be something that she's vowed really that she's going to speak the truth, that she's going as far as this matter with the as far as this coronavirus with the flawed testing that is connected with it, and there might be something that's connected with the government that she's going to, as far as speaking her truth at this time. Maybe it could be something regarding some government protocols or procedures, or doing more research into this. That the government should do something to fund more research into this coronavirus vaccine. That is one thing I am thinking of as a possibility. But the fact she's got very strong Sagittarius energy, she has Venus, Neptune, Mercury, the Sun, and the Ascendant in Sagittarius. There's a lot of energy where she wants to speak the veritable truth, especially having Mercury in Sagittarius. And the fact that it appears to conjunct Neptune tells me speaking the veritable truth about things that are fallacious, that can be deceptive. In the 12 and being really you're talking about I mean, this energy, I mean, her chart, I mean, it's just really, like a lot of other charts, of course, I mean, is just really astoundingly accurate. The thing that I notice with her though is that when you're talking about an issue, I mean, you're talking about the moon in Gemini looks like it's an opposition, I mean, to her sun. And even if it's not, the fact that you have such a disparity in energy, you have the sun, which could be a very strong focus on speaking the truth and your veritable truth being veracious, and whether it might and not really not maybe not much regard uh, on whether it may hurt someone or not. Not that it would be malicious, but it would be something where that's just where the Sagittarius energy is. But then she has the moon in Gemini, which is a little bit more like, wanting basically your response system saying things where you don't necessarily want to, maybe say what the person would want to hear, but not want, in order for not the feelings to be hurt of that person you're saying it to. So, and also too, the fact that she has the moon in Gemini conjunct Saturn. The moon in Gemini could be really have emotional versatility, basically, and express manifold expressions of emotions and feelings. But the Saturn conjunct, it tells me that her feelings might be somewhat inhibited, and the fact that the moon appears to make an opposition to her, or at least a loose opposition to her Sagittarius ascendant, it shows me that's another indicator that those feelings might have difficulty being projected outwardly. Um, and really, there's not much more I really could want to really to say about this as far as transits and natal placements connected with what's happening with her right now. She does have transit Neptune right now in the third house, so I mean that's an indicator where there might be some dissolving. You're talking about of breathing. She might still, wouldn't surprise me if she might still be feeling some symptoms connected with this. When you have transit Neptune in the third house, that could also cloud the memory a little bit and obscure the thinking, and really, because the third house is the house of rational thinking, and when you have transit Neptune in it, sometimes it might dissolve it. You're talking about also as well that transit, I mean, she also has the Neptune fairly close to her Mercury, natal Neptune close to her natal Mercury in her chart, and then the transit Neptune in the third house. So hopefully she's not experiencing, like Chris Cuomo had stated, at least he theorized that he's experiencing brain fog as a repercussion as from an after effect of the coronavirus. And I'm hoping that if that is the case, if that is valid, that Alyssa Milano is not going to experience that as well. So, anyways, really not much more want to say as far as that goes. Well, she does have another thing I want to point out. She has the 8th house cusp at 29 degrees Cancer, and 29 degrees in astrology is a degree of crisis and upheaval on the 8th house cusp of death. So it's something that it's not surprising she had a situation which could have been potentially perilous due to a due to a virus. And I mean, the 8th house is the house of viruses as well. And the thing about it, she did talk about, I think there's something about an elephant, feeling like an elephant on her chest. And you're talking about the chest, of course, is associated with the zodiac sign Cancer. Now, on the positive side, 29 degrees Cancer in astrology has often been referred to as the millionaire's degree. Now, my perception of that millionaire's degree, that it doesn't necessarily mean or give assurance that somebody is going to literally be a millionaire with that degree, but what it tells me is that it could be a degree of affluence, and she has it on the house house that is connected with shared resources. So it tells me that matters with shared resources have probably been very fortuitous for her, to say the least. She has a lot of fortuitous, lucky Sagittarius energy in her chart as well. She has the Sun in Sagittarius in the first house, conjunct the Ascendant, which could radiate an abundance of energy and vitality, a lot of goodwill. And Although I want to talk about one more thing, that ruler of the eighth house is in the sixth house of health. So it tells me there that it does increase the possibility, propensity of passing away due to a chronic debilitating illness. The moon, that ruler of the moon is in Gemini. That could be something associated with like the lungs, the breathing, the respiratory system, something with the arms, the hands, the wrists, anything that could be Gemini related. So anyway, that's pretty much as far as what I wanted to say as far as that goes. And the Gemini related things, that energy obviously can be increased. The fact that it does that any debilitations connected with it, the fact that it does make an opposition to her ascendant. It's not, or at least a loose opposition to the ascendant. It's not opposing the sun, but again, it is conjunct Saturn, and Saturn can be about chronic debilitation, so it could increase that energy that I was just talking about as far as illnesses associated with Moon in Gemini. And really, is really not much more I want to say about that. I thought, well, no, well, I'm seeing another thing that's interesting. Uh, is that transit South Node in Sagittarius had just recently um, passed her Sun in Sagittarius. The fact that, well, I'm sorry, it didn't really pass it. It's actually closing in on it. So she has to be careful at this time because the Sun is about life in astrology, and the transit South Node is actually getting ready to pass it. It could be what we're going away from, but really what it could actually, I mean, in most cases, in this case, I don't think she's right at this point in a situation that's potentially perilous. I believe she's out of this as far as the coronavirus symptoms. I think they are pretty much gone, but it could also be could manifest in a number of other ways. It could be going beyond some kind of authority in her life. It could be something else that could be passing. That could be connected with the sun as well. It could simply be something where she's had maybe a focus on, such as like some philosophy that might be going away at this time. So I mean, it could manifest in a number of ways, but it's still a time where, I mean, she needs to be careful. When you have a transit like that that doesn't come around very often, you're talking about like once like every 18 or 19 years. When you have the transit South Node hitting one's Sun, the Sun is about life, and a South Node is about what we're going away from. It could also be an eye-related issue, left or right eye, depending on the gender in one's chart. And the thing is, I mean, and she also has the moon going back to the moon conjunct Saturn, so that could give some limitations with an eye, and could be like double vision or something being in Gemini, I would say. And anyway, and she also might be dealing with some heart, it could be some heart related issues or upper back related issues coming. The fact that that South Node is closing in on her natal Sun in Sagittarius. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.